Good morning. Good to be with you again. Now, there is no doubt that in these difficult times, that apart from touching and seeing each other, hearing the direct sound of each other's voices, unsullied by electronics, is a sensation that I've missed most. However marvellous it is to hear a voice on radio or disc, the real thing is better. There's always a measure of distortion, and even if it's very slight, it's still there. Speaking face to face will always carry more information because the meaning will be amplified because you can see the listener's reaction. And that inclination of the head to lift or an eyebrow will prompt you to maybe clarify your meaning that you cannot do on the phone. Mind you, I don't really know how we would have managed without them in recent times. And I suppose FaceTime and Skype have made a real difference to us. Often we hear a voice within ourselves when there's actually no one else present. This is when our memories can conjure up the sound of a familiar voice, even one we've never heard before. Sometimes, when reading a passage of dialogue in a book, you form a picture of that speaker, or what they may look like in your mind, and what they sound like. So much so that when we actually hear their voice, we are surprised that they are so different from the impression we've invented for them. I'm sure we're all familiar with the idea of putting a face to a voice, and when we meet a person, how wide of the mark we can be. This goes to show how inferior, lesser forms of communications are. It takes an enormous amount of written word to transmit an idea that a short conversation would accomplish in seconds, and probably with greater understanding. I don't know about you, but I have a great deal of difficulty with text messages, unless they're very simple, that is, no more than 3 words long. I know that youngsters seem to conduct their entire lives with them, but I still prefer to hear a voice. Mind you, it is cheaper text and quite immediate. It's truly uplifting to hear beautiful voices, though, because they can convey meanings more subtle than the written word, however artfully presented. The spiritual songs of Paul Robinson or Mahalia Jackson move us as much by the quality of diction and timbre as the lyrics. And I expect many of a certain vintage, only have to hear the words "blow the wind southerly" to instantly hear Kathleen Ferrier's magnificent mezzo. And this is the wonderful quality of the voice. Written words on a page rely on our ability to extract from them the best that we can. But to hear someone else often gives a different perspective that we may never have thought of. This doesn't have to come from a professional, though. We can all do it. What better way is there to commit something to memory than to hear a voice repeating it over and over? How do you know how many days there are in a particular month? I bet you don't have to picture the written text in your mind when you run through the words silently. When I recite that verse in my head, I can still hear my teacher and my 6-year-old classmates. We are able to remember songs and poems often by their alliteration, rhythm and assonance, qualities that can only be heard. The voice too has that other mystical dimension when we hear singing. In a choir, group or solo, accompanied or a cappella, it has the power to lift us that mere musical instruments cannot. This is true even when sung in a language we don't understand or without words altogether. After this long period of denial, I'm sure we will be all glad to be back together and face to face, to hear each other's voices with only the air between us. Surely the sounds of voices of people together, enjoying fellowship with laughter and good humour, must be one of the sweetest sounds we can ever hear. And now would be a good time to practice it and show it off. So, phone a friend.